I reported my neighbor's illegal construction. Days later, my basement flooded and my baby's crib was soaked. She watched from her window and said, "Oops. Maybe next time you'll mind your business." I screamed, "You did this to an infant?" But then a city inspector called me with a confession that changed everything. I live in Levittown, Pennsylvania. If you know the area, it's all older homes, close neighbors, small yards, and people who mostly keep to themselves. I work from home in IT, and my wife, Molly, works full-time at a dental office. We moved here because it was a quiet area, decent schools, and close to my wife's mom who helps out with our baby girl, Riley. We bought this house 3 years ago. Riley was born a year later. I had finished the basement myself. Drywall, carpet, electric, the works. It was our little bonus space. We used part of it as a home office and part as Riley's nursery. I thought I did a good job. I took pride in it. Then 6 months ago, this woman moved into the house next door. Her name was Francine Weller. Around 50s, alone, always dressed like she was going to a real estate meeting. Big fake smile but cold eyes. From day one, it was noise. Trucks, contractors, dumpsters, jackhammers. At first I thought she was just fixing the place up. It was a bit rundown before she moved in. But it didn't stop. Every day there was new construction. New cement being poured. Whole sections of her yard being dug up. I never saw a single permit posted. I'm not some nosy neighbor. I kept to myself. But when I started seeing her workers throwing debris over the fence onto a shared drainage trench, I had to say something. This trench runs between our yards, but it's designed to carry rainwater from her property down behind mine and into the public runoff system. Our houses were built on a slight slope. Hers is higher up. If that trench clogs, water builds up behind her retaining wall, and it pushes downhill. Straight into my yard. Straight into my basement. So one morning I walk over calmly and say, "Hey, just a heads up, that trench is part of the water system. If it gets blocked, it could cause flooding." She barely looked at me. Said, "That trench is on my property. You don't need to worry about it." She was wrong. I double-checked the old survey that came with the house. It clearly marked the trench as a shared runoff path maintained by both homes. I took pictures. Documented it. Then I called the township. An inspector came out 4 days later. Nice guy. Took one look at her cement work and said, "Yeah. I don't see any permits for this." He measured, took photos, and said he'd report it. 2 days after that, Francine got slapped with a stop work order taped to her front door. I watched her rip it down and throw it in the trash. From that moment, everything changed. She stopped pretending to be polite. I'd catch her staring at me from her porch. Her workers disappeared for a few days. Then, out of nowhere, Friday night it rained. It wasn't a storm. Just steady rain for a few hours. Around 10 p.m., I noticed a musty smell. Walked down to the basement. My socks were instantly soaked. I flipped the lights on. There was standing water across the floor. 2 inches deep. I felt my chest tighten. I looked over at Riley's side of the room. The edge of her crib rug was soaked. The lower part of the crib legs had absorbed water. I checked her mattress, dry, thank God. She had been napping upstairs that day. If she hadn't been, she would have been sleeping in a flooded room. I ran outside in the rain, grabbed a flashlight, and went to the back fence. That trench? The same one I warned her about. It was filled with fresh concrete. Someone had poured concrete directly into the channel. It was hardening right then. The water had nowhere to go. It backed up against her new retaining wall and spilled over the side into my yard, directly into my basement windows. I stood there in the rain, light shaking in my hand. And then I saw her. Francine. Upstairs. Glass of wine in one hand, standing by her window. Watching. She raised her glass and smiled. Just smiled like she'd won something. I lost it. I screamed up at her. Are you serious? You did this? You flooded my baby's room. She cracked her window open and said in the calmest, smug voice I've ever heard, "Oops. Maybe next time you'll mind your business." Then she closed it and disappeared. The cops came. I showed them the trench, the wet basement, the crib. They said unless I had proof she poured the concrete, they couldn't do much. They told me to contact the township again and maybe consider civil court. My insurance company said they wouldn't cover the damage because it was man-made. They called it external negligence. Not a covered event. Out of pocket. Thousands of dollars. I was shaking. Not just from anger, but from how helpless I felt. But then, this is where things shifted. 3 days later, I got a call from a township inspector named Derek Malloy. I remembered his name from the first visit. He sounded nervous. "Mr. Carver," he said, I shouldn't be calling you like this, but I needed to tell you something." I sat down. He said, "I looked into Francine Weller's permits. There's a reason she's been getting away with things. She's connected. Her brother is on the township zoning board. Some of us were told to let things slide. We weren't even allowed to escalate your complaint last month." I was stunned. He continued, "But after the flooding, I did some digging on my own time. I found evidence that her construction is violating not just local codes, but state runoff laws. And I have emails showing her brother pressuring people to approve permits retroactively. I can't say more on the phone. But if you want to fight this, I can help." That was all I needed to hear. What started as an illegal construction project had just turned into corruption. And I knew exactly how to use it. After that call from Derek, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking on Riley every hour. I moved her crib upstairs and started sleeping on the couch next to it. The basement was a disaster. Fans and dehumidifiers were running 24/7, and the smell of mold was starting to creep in. My wife was furious, not just about the flooding, but about how powerless we felt. We met with a lawyer that week. He said we had a strong civil case, but lawsuits take time and money. Months, maybe years. He also warned us. If she has people protecting her in the township, they might try to cover their tracks. Get everything in writing. Record everything. So I did. Derek and I met up in his car behind a diner late one night. He handed me a USB stick and a folder. Inside were screenshots of internal emails between township officials, permit documents with forged signatures, and a timeline showing how Francine's inspections were mysteriously approved, without anyone ever visiting her property. He even had a copy of a complaint from a contractor who quit midway through her job because she asked him to dump leftover cement into a drainage thing. That was 2 days before my flood. Derek told me something else that changed the game. "She's done this before," he said. "Not the flooding thing, but bullying neighbors, building illegal stuff, then using her brother to shut them down. 2 people on your street tried to file complaints months ago. They were told to drop it. I asked him for their names. One was a man down the block who had moved recently. The other was a woman named Gina who still lived here. I went to talk to her. Gina opened the door like she'd been expecting someone to finally say something. "Let me guess," she said. "Francine wrecked your yard too?" I told her about the flood, the trench, the crib. She looked like she was about to cry. "She ruined my garden," Gina said. "Built her stupid wall right up to the property line, blocked my sunlight, and when I complained, someone from zoning told me I was in violation for having unapproved planters. I gave up. I didn't have the energy." That's when I knew. It wasn't just about me. Francine had made a career out of breaking rules and intimidating people into silence. But now I had proof. And people. Over the next few days, I went full-on investigator. I gathered statements from neighbors, took photos of every violation I could see from public property, and filed a formal complaint, not with the township, but with the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and the State Ethics Board. I also contacted a local journalist. Small-town newspaper guy. I sent him everything Derek gave me, plus my own evidence. He didn't respond at first. But then, 4 days later, he showed up at my door. "You're not the first to come to me about Francine," he said. "But you're the first with actual proof." He interviewed me for 2 hours. I showed him the flood damage, Riley's ruined nursery, and the sealed trench. He took pictures and said, "This is going to piss off the right people." I felt hope for the first time in weeks. But then Francine struck again. A week later, I came outside to find that someone had dumped several bags of garbage across my front lawn. Not just trash, I mean rotten meat, eggs, old diapers, coffee grounds, the works. It stank for days. I caught her staring again, sipping wine. This time, I didn't yell. I took photos, bagged the trash with gloves, and handed it over to the police with a formal complaint. Still no arrests. Still no action. But then, the newspaper article dropped. Front page of the Levittown Ledger. Local woman linked to illegal construction and township corruption. They didn't use my name, but the details were clear. Derek was quoted anonymously. The article laid out the whole thing: how Francine had used her connections to bypass regulations, how her brother had pressured zoning staff, how complaints were ignored, and how a young family's basement was destroyed due to her negligence. It caused a stir. By noon that day, the township office phones were ringing off the hook. That evening, a news van parked across from Francine's house. I watched her peek through the curtains and slam them shut. Then something happened I didn't expect. Her contractors stopped showing up. One by one they quit. The giant cement mixer that was scheduled to arrive, cancelled. The crew working on her illegal deck? Gone. I thought she might back off. I was wrong. The next night, I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of glass shattering. Someone had thrown a brick through our back window, right where Riley's playpen used to sit. Luckily, we had moved it weeks ago. But the message was clear. Inside the brick was a note, rolled up and taped. It read, "You should have stayed out of it." I handed it to the police. They shrugged. No fingerprints, no cameras. I installed security cameras the next day, high-res, motion-activated, night vision. And then I filed for a restraining order against Francine. She showed up to the hearing with a lawyer and an attitude. Told the judge I was harassing her, that I was obsessed, and trying to ruin her life because I couldn't handle living next to a successful woman. I played the security footage. Showed the trench. Showed the brick. Showed her smirking at the flood. The judge granted a temporary order. But something still didn't sit right. That night, I got another call from Derek. "I think they're trying to erase the paper trail," he said. "Files are disappearing from the server. I tried to pull up your permit complaint, and it's gone. Others too. Someone's cleaning house." I asked him if he saved copies. He said, "I did. And I just got a new job offer from another township. I'm leaving in 2 weeks. I'll get you everything before I go." I didn't know it then, but that decision, Derek handing over the last batch of files, would set the stage for something much bigger. Something none of them saw coming. The next time I saw Francine, she was in her driveway yelling at someone over the phone. She looked panicked. Her hair was messy, she wasn't wearing makeup like usual, and her voice cracked as she shouted into the phone, pacing in her slippers. That same morning, I got a knock at the door. It was Gina, the neighbor who'd told me about her ruined garden. "You're not gonna believe this," she said, holding up a printed email. "My property line complaint from last year? They just reopened it." I didn't even refile. The state did. Turns out the state ethics board didn't sit on my complaint. They had opened a quiet investigation behind the scenes. And now that the newspaper article blew it all up, they were digging through everything tied to Francine's building permits. I should have felt relieved. But I was still dealing with damage. Mold had set in behind the drywall in Riley's nursery. We had to gut it. That meant paying a contractor to remove insulation, treat the studs, and redo everything. Insurance still wouldn't help. The costs were bleeding us. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. The journalist who wrote the article, his name was Pete, called me one afternoon. "I think she's planning to sue you," he said. "Someone from the township leaked a draft letter her lawyer's been passing around. Defamation, harassment, damages. She's trying to flip the narrative." He sent me a copy. It was a full-blown lawsuit, claiming I waged a personal campaign of false allegations and caused emotional distress and reputational harm. I showed it to my lawyer. He laughed. "She's bluffing," he said. "She's panicking. But still, you should counter. And if we go to court, we'll subpoena everything. Her brother, the township files, the contractors. All of it." That gave me an idea. We didn't have to wait for the township to act. We could take the case to the public. I sent Pete everything Derek had just passed along. The newer files showed even more: text messages between Francine and her brother discussing fast-tracking permits, and one message that said, "Just need it done before rain season. If the trench causes issues again, that's on him, not me." Those last 6 words, "that's on him, not me," made my blood boil. But then came the biggest break of all. Derek's last email to me said, "Check her contractor's license. There's something off there." So I did. Francine had used a man named Bill Mercer for most of her construction work. Only problem? He wasn't licensed. In fact, he had his license revoked 3 years ago in New Jersey for unsafe building practices. I looked him up and found a forum post from another homeowner who'd hired him, also ended up with flooding issues. This was gold. I sent it all to the state licensing board. Pete ran a follow-up story titled, "Unlicensed Contractor Linked to Flooding, Code Violations, and Township Cover-Up." This time, they used Francine's full name. Her phone must have blown up because she didn't come outside for 3 days. Then, late one night, we saw flashing lights. 2 township vehicles. One marked Code Enforcement. They walked her property with flashlights, measuring tools, clipboards. The next morning, another big orange stop work sign was taped to her door. But this one was different. Immediate enforcement, structural hazard, subject to demolition review. And just like that, she lost it. She marched over to my house, banging on the door, screaming at the top of her lungs. "You think you've won? You think you're better than me? You're a loser in a cheap house raising a brat. I'll bury you in paperwork, you piece of—" I didn't open the door. But the camera caught all of it. I sent that clip to the judge. The temporary restraining order? It became permanent. Her court-ordered distance from our home increased to 300 feet. But the damage wasn't done. Not yet. Because 3 days later, her brother, the zoning board member, was put on administrative leave pending ethics charges. And Francine? Well, her little construction project was no longer her biggest problem. Because the DEP had just opened an environmental damage case against her, and they don't play around. After the article about the unlicensed contractor and the stop work notice, things went downhill fast for Francine. Not just downhill. Off a cliff. Within 2 weeks, she had township inspectors at her house nearly every day. DEP agents showed up with cameras and clipboards. They walked the trench, took soil samples, measured runoff patterns. One guy told me, "She's looking at a minimum $25,000 fine for environmental tampering. Maybe more." Then came the official order. The cement she poured into the drainage trench? She was required to remove all of it and restore the drainage system to its original condition, at her expense. And she couldn't hire just anyone to do it. She had to use a DEP-approved contractor, file a new set of permits, and have it supervised by an engineer. She tried to fight it. Filed appeals. Claimed it wasn't her fault. It didn't matter. The DEP found her personally responsible for redirecting water flow that damaged neighboring property. And the best part? They cited her for endangering a minor, because Riley's crib had been placed in a room that flooded due to her illegal activity. It wasn't criminal, but it was enough to lock her into liability. Then came the township's ruling. Her illegal rear addition had to be torn down. Not just paused, demolished. No permits, no inspection, no records. She'd built it up against a shared stormwater easement. That meant it was a threat to more than just my home. One morning, I watched from my kitchen window as a backhoe tore down the brand new deck she had poured with that smug look on her face. I wanted to cheer. But I didn't. Because I was still pissed off. Not just at her, at the whole system. So I kept going. I filed a small claims suit for the damage to our home. The judge ruled in my favor. Francine was ordered to pay $14,200 to cover mold remediation, damaged furniture, and repairs. She didn't show up to court. Her lawyer tried to delay it, but the judge had seen enough. Then the big one hit. The state ethics board completed their investigation into her brother, the zoning board official. They found a long history of misconduct, approving permits for friends, interfering with inspections, and retaliating against residents who complained. He was fired. Publicly. The township released a statement. They promised new oversight and reforms. Francine's name became poison around Levittown. People crossed the street to avoid her. Contractors refused to take her calls. Local realtors even stopped showing her house to buyers. Yes, she tried to sell. But with a crumbling backyard, a gutted addition, and lawsuits piling up, no one wanted it. She finally snapped. One morning I came outside and found her standing in the middle of my yard. Just standing there like she was in a trance. No shoes. Pajamas. Holding her phone. "You ruined my life," she whispered. "I hope your kid grows up and hates you." I didn't say anything. I just held up my phone and started recording. She walked off my lawn without another word. That was the last time I ever saw her. She moved out 6 weeks later. Overnight. U-Haul showed up after dark. No goodbye. Just gone. But even that wasn't the end. Because 2 months after she left, I got a letter from a state prosecutor. They were pursuing criminal charges against her for falsifying documents tied to the permit applications. Apparently she forged a contractor's signature. That carries up to 5 years in prison in Pennsylvania. Whether she'll actually serve time? I don't know. But there's a warrant out for her arrest if she sets foot back in the county. As for me? I'll be honest, I learned something in all of this. I had the chance to walk away early on. I didn't. I pushed, I kept digging, and I exposed the corrupt system. But I also let it eat me alive for a while. I wasn't sleeping. I was angry all the time. I was short with my wife. I missed time with Riley while I fought a war in my backyard. That's on me. But Riley's safe. Her new nursery is upstairs. Strong walls. Dry carpet. Bright light. I sit with her some nights and just listen to her breathe. And I feel something I didn't think I'd feel again, peace. Francine tried to destroy my home and scare me into silence. In the end, she destroyed her own life instead. All I did was let the truth speak for itself, and make damn sure everyone heard it.